feels weird being back on a stage after COVID, and I'm nervous for the first time in a long time. But it'll be fine. I'm here to talk about infrastructure as real code and introduce you to Pulumi. So has anybody tried Pulumi so far? Any hands? One hand. Cool. Okay. So my name is Klug, as mentioned. I work at a company called Active Solution. I am in the wrong place, I know. I'm a Microsoft person. I do .NET stuff. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I do ASP.NET web development and .NET Core stuff in general. But hey, I do JavaScript stuff as well, so I thought I'd fit in perfectly as well. So I've been around for longer than I want to remember. I started working in IT sort of 2000. And it used to be that we got these, right? You'd go in, you build a new project, somebody would order a bunch of these things, which was awesome. You'd have to wait a couple of months for them to be delivered. And you'd plug them in, and you would have like cool racks that look like this, in theory, because they actually look like that. And the problem with this is physical infrastructure is complicated. And I love when I go to clients' places, and I'm a consultant, by the way. I do coding for them, and I help them out with infrastructure, and they go, well, our dev environment and test environment and prod environment are almost the same. So is that. Almost the same is not good enough. If you want to have multiple environments, they have to be identical, or as close to identical as possible to make it reasonable. So infrastructure today is a lot different, right? We go into a website, and you just point and click. You go, I want one of these, one of these, one of these. You get your boss's credit card, you punch that in, he pays for everything. Everything is good. You can order whatever you want, and it's there in maybe not seconds, but at least minutes. You can have a full working infrastructure set up in minutes compared to months. And with these new abilities, we also have a bunch of new possibilities, right? Because all of a sudden, we can automate this. We can take our infrastructure and put it into GitHub. That sounds weird, I know, but basically, we can take the definition of everything, put it into GitHub. Fantastic, people can have a look at it, people can run it. They can go into GitHub and say, start this, it goes off to whatever cloud you've selected. In my personal world, mostly Azure, and it just spins off everything for you that you need to run it. And this is really, really useful. I've done more of this than I wish I had done, because I like coding, and that's kind of where Pulumi comes in. So when we look at infrastructure as code, we have two different camps, and then Pulumi. So we've got the imperative side of things, which is you write everything manually, sort of line by line. Like you do PowerShell or Bash or batch files, and you basically just script up whatever you need, which is cool because it's really, really fast. It's ridiculously fast to get started with. Anybody can start a Bash file and start typing away. Anybody can use for example, the Azure Cli to spin up infrastructure. The downside is that you often have to keep in mind that infrastructure could be there before, so you have to make your code idempotent because you need to be able to run this over and over again. And when it comes to, once again, I'm an Azure person, the Azure Cli is fantastic. It's almost idempotent. Almost is almost worse than not at all, because you have to know where is it not idempotent and where is it. Where can I run it multiple times, and where will running it multiple times throw an error? The other side of things, we have the declarative way, right? So we have Terraform, Arm Templates, Bicep Templates, CloudFormation. There are a bunch of different tools out there. And they're nice because you declare what you want. You say, I want to have this. I want to have 2 web servers, a load balancer, a storage account, a CDN, a domain name, blah, blah, blah. And you just tell it, this is what I want. And then you take your declaration and you say, here, somebody, something else over here, go and fix it. I don't care. It's like being a king. You just say, make it so, and it just becomes so. It's awesome. And then I put Pulumi in the middle. Because there's a big difference between imperative and declarative, and that's the fact that in declarative ways, you often end up with DSL, so domain-specific language that somebody has defined for you, and it often doesn't have the power that you have in imperative coding, where you have a language to work with. It's hard to do if statement, for loops, and a bunch of things like that. I love, for example, has anybody worked with Terraform? A few? I really love the fact that there is no if statement in Terraform. There's no way to say, create this resource if. But Chris, there is. Yes, there is. I know. I'm very well aware of the fact that you can do it, but there's no if statement. But there is a count. So you can loop, right? An if statement is nothing more than a loop of 0 or 1 elements, am I right? So obviously we don't need if, we can loop 0 or 1. It's just dumb. I'm sorry, it's just really dumb. And also your element that you create all of a sudden becomes an array with 0 or 1 entries in it. And it just makes everything complicated. Whereas in imperative code, we just write if. And then we make a call, if. Pulumi comes in the middle and says, hey, let's do sort of both worlds. Let's do code. Let's allow you to code and use code to create your declaration, your declarative statement of what you want. And then you let somebody take that declaration and create your infrastructure for you. So we had best of both worlds. So if we look at PowerShell, it looks like that. You go in, you create your credentials, you log in, you create whatever you need, fine, and hopefully it's idempotent and you can run it multiple times. Azure Arm Templates. Has anybody worked with Arm Templates? Good. Well, there was a poor hand out there. I feel for you. You want to poke your eyes out in the first 5 minutes. You sort of want to go and say, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to become a barista because this sucks. It's JSON-based, but basically you define it in JSON. Fantastic language to use for that. Slightly better than YAML, but anyhow. And then you tell the Azure CLI to, hey, set up my environment. Here is the declaration. Bicep has replaced ARM and has now a nicer syntax, which is more like Terraform. And then we have Pulumi, where you choose your language. There are a couple to choose from. And then, in this case, it's TypeScript. I like TypeScript. I've written a lot of TypeScript in my days. And it's really cool. I can just go in here and I can write my own TypeScript program where I basically just import Pulumi, I import Azure, and then I create my instances. I create a resource group, create a storage account. I have the full language at my disposal. I can do ifs and loops, and I can run off and query databases and things like that. I have everything I want inside of a Pulumi script, or a TypeScript. But it doesn't actually create anything, and I'll get back to that. It actually creates a desired state. So Pulumi infrastructure as software, I think is the word for it. So the high-level architecture for Pulumi is you have 3 different areas of Pulumi. You got the CLI part. The CLI you install on your machine. It runs on pretty much anything you can find. So it runs on Linux, Mac, and Windows. Yay for Windows. It has a language runtime, which is cool because the CLI isn't dependent on a specific language. It has a language runtime support. So basically you can load in other language runtimes into the CLI and have it execute different things. And it has a deployment engine, which is the thing that actually knows what needs to be updated, what needs to be created, what needs to be deleted. Then you have your packages, and the packages come out of your package manager of choice. So if you're writing Python, it comes out of pip or something. I don't know, I'm not a Python programmer. If you're TypeScript, it comes out of NPM. If you're C#, it comes out of NuGet, and so on. And it just feels natural. Everything is built around how you would do it in that language. And then you have, those packages contain a resource plugin, which is sort of a binary that's made to talk to this cloud or the provider you have chosen. It's built in Go. And then there's an SDK, which is a layer on top that's written in your language that you have chosen so that you can work with it. And finally, it has state. So state is interesting. Some things don't have state. So if you run declarative code or imperative coding, you don't have state. If you run something like Azure Bicep or Azure Arm, it doesn't have state. But Pulumi, Terraform, and some others, they keep state of what was the thing that I had created last time. So it knows what was there from the last run or the last 67 million runs you've done before. It knows this is what should be deployed right now. And then it basically diffs back and forth and figures out what's really there and what have you written and what needs to be done to get it to what you need. And it also, one of the biggest benefits of that is you can actually do Pulumi destroy and tear things down, which is missing in some infrastructure as code languages. And it has state storage. So you can store your state on your local machine, which is a, pardon my French, but shit option. Because when somebody runs over your machine or you drop it or it gets stolen, your infrastructure goes out the window. Bad idea. You can put it into an S3 bucket, blob storage in Azure, wherever you want to share it. You can put it on Bitbucket. You can put it on GitHub, wherever. It's just a JSON file, basically. Or you can store it with Pulumi's service. So they have a service where you can store it at their location. They will make sure to take care of it, and they will also make sure to have access rights to it, so only certain people in the company are allowed to run it in certain environments, and a bunch of really cool features on top of it. So Pulumi. A Pulumi program is interesting. You write your Pulumi program, you run Pulumi up. That's all you have to read. Right, you write Pulumi up. It looks at your application. It says, so what kind of language are you running? What are you writing? Well, I am writing TypeScript in this case, so it's going to go and pull up Node. So it's going to start up Node. It's going to go back and load my program into Node and run my program. Inside my program, I go and say new resource group. That talks to the resource provider. That talks to the deployment engine inside of the CLI. That talks to the resource plugin. That talks to the cloud. And then that thing talks to the cloud to get things set up. But it doesn't actually, when you do new resource, it doesn't actually create anything. It just creates a definition of what you want, and then at the end of your program, whatever you have created will be handled by Pulumi and created for you. So the new resource group doesn't actually run off to Azure and say, create resource group. It just says, hey, Pulumi, I want a resource group. And then it doesn't do anything else. So your program runs really fast, and then Pulumi takes over and it takes a long time. And then it basically stores the state, what was created in this run. It takes that state, shoves it off to some form of storage. That's the way that Pulumi works. Fairly simple. But I want to mention that Pulumi is sort of cloud agnostic. You can run against any provider that they have, and I think they've got 50 or 100 providers or something like that. But you do select a target. So you do write your code for Azure, or you do write your code for Amazon, or you do write your code for whatever you're using, or you're writing it for Kubernetes, or you're writing it, but that's by default. There's nothing that stops you from basically pulling in the package for AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, and then writing your own layer on top of it so that you can sort of go and say, create a, I don't know, fiddly-pop, and the fiddly-pop turns into something in Azure and something else in Amazon and something else in Google Cloud, for example. So what is a Pulumi program? Well, it's fairly simple. You have a program, in my case, a TypeScript program. You make it a Pulumi project by adding a YAML file in there called pulumi.yaml. And then you add another file in there to create what is called a stack. So a stack is a specific configuration for your code to run. So basically, you have a dev stack, a QA stack, a prod stack. And the stack is a named set of configuration that you can use. And then inside of your code, you can pull out that configuration dependent on what stack you have selected to work with. It looks like this if you open up in VS Code. It's literally just a TypeScript program. There's nothing in a project. There's nothing in there. There's an index.ts file if you use the TypeScript. There's a tsconfig to configure your TypeScript stuff. There's package.json because it's a node project. There's a Pulumi YAML file that says that this is a Pulumi project. There is a pulumi.dev.yaml which says that it's a dev stack. That's the only stack I've got in there. So that's your program. So I now have 37 minutes to write a Pulumi program for you and show you how it works. I want to put a little caveat in here. My machine has decided to cause problems, so Node doesn't really work on my laptop, which is kind of annoying and problematic when I'm running TypeScript. Then I tried another laptop and had some other issues with that laptop. Then I tried it on my stationary computer at home. So I'm now running an RDP connection to my stationary laptop, a stationary desktop at home over the connection on my phone. So hopefully this will all just work. I'm sorry if it doesn't, but that's the plan. And also VPNing to my apartment is not 100% stable in all situations, but I'll do my best to try. So I'll zoom this in to see if you can see a bit better. Can you in back see that? Cool, nodes going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by saying Pulumi login file : // . That tells Pulumi that I want to store my state in this local directory. Really poor idea in every single way, but it's the fastest way to get started. And for demoing, it's kind of cool because I can show you the state file. But you can also do Pulumi login to, as I said, S3 buckets, Azure storage, or their service as such. But I want it locally. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check the Azure CLI to see what account I'm actually running. So I'm running against, yes, my own free trial, that's good. Because it uses the Azure Cli. And once in a while, being a consultant, I do have something like 25 different Azure accounts on my machine configured, and all of a sudden you run this demo, and I have just set up infrastructure in my client's account. Generally not very popular. Often I can remove it. Not all the times I do have access to do that, which causes problems. So I checked that out. So the next thing is Pulumi, new. Look at that, it remembers sort of everything. So I'm going to say Pulumi new. It's going to target Azure, and I'm going to use TypeScript. So they have these starter packs where it's like Azure or AWS and whatever, and then dash your language. So I go Azure TypeScript. You get this cool, old school interactive prompt. So it says name of project, Pulumi demo is fine. Project description, have no idea what I would use that for, so that's fine. Stack name, let's do dev. So you can create as many stacks as you want. It's just a configured set of settings. So I'm going to give it a passphrase. This is kind of cool because it allows me to put config into a dev YAML file using secrets values. So I can actually go and tell it to encode the values in there, so I can commit my stack to GitHub, but all my config values are encrypted anyway, so you can't get access to them, which is kind of nice. And you can also exchange your secrets provider to use Azure Key Vault and some other options as well. But I'm going to keep them locally in my file. And then it asks me what Azure location to use. I should obviously use Sweden Central, but I don't know what the name for that is. It's probably Sweden Central. So it starts pulling down Node packages, and it's going to stay here for about, hopefully 40 seconds. When I did, look at that, that was pretty fast. Cool. I've done this I did a workshop in Poland, and at that point, it took 22 minutes to run npm install on this project. I don't know, something about me, machines, and Node. But here it is. It comes up and says it's installed a ton of packages, and it's ready to go. And it says, to perform an initial deployment, run Pulumi up. I won't do that. I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to open up VS Code so we can look at what it has actually created. So I'm going to zoom that a little bit. Is that big enough for you in the back? You need bigger? Thumbs up is great now, because that means yes, everything is fine, or no, go bigger. Let's go one step bigger. Like that. So you can see it's just a regular TypeScript project, node modules, .pulumi is the Pulumi stuff that I told it to store when I did login file : //. We have the Pulumi YAML file that basically just says that this is a Pulumi project, and it tells it what type of runtime it is, so it's a node runtime. And we have the Pulumi dev YAML, which is the dev stack. As you can see, there's an encryption salt up there. It encrypts this for us. Right now, no encrypted values, and the only thing in there is that Azure location thingy that I put in to be West Europe. And the more important part, obviously, index.ts. So in here, we have the code for it. So I'm going to remove a lot of this code because we don't want that. We do. I'm going to put it back. So as you can see here, just pull in Pulumi, a couple of namespaces, and then I create a new resource. I'm going to change this, though, to make it simpler. I'm going to make this pull in the whole package, Azure instead. And then with the power of static typing, there it is. We actually get full IntelliSense as well, so whatever you call it in other languages. IntelliSense, I think, is Visual Studio specific, but we get tooling for it, which is really cool. So I can go in here and I can see what can I create in the resources thing. Well, there's a bunch of things I can create. So here it is. It creates a resource group. That's all I'm doing at the moment. So if we go back out, so let's see, keep track of everything. And we go back to this window. What did I name this? Let's open it in here instead. So we got Pulumi demo here. I'm going to go ahead and say Pulumi up. Oh, I know why it's used that. It's actually not full screening on me. That's why I can't use Alt Tab. It asks me for my credentials, which is funny because there's no actually encrypted values inside of my stack, but it still asks me for my credentials every single time you type something. You can put it into an environment variable and sort of get it out of there. So this is now going to run Pulumi. And this is where I wish I could like tap dance or sing or something, because this takes about a minute. I don't know quite why. It used to be a lot faster in earlier versions of Pulumi. But But at least there's little dots going dot, 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 telling you that something is happening. It doesn't tell you what is happening, but something is happening. And yes, it's an interactive shell, which is kind of annoying, but you can always go Pulumi up -- yes, so you don't have to get this. But if you just do Pulumi up, it tells me that it's going to create a stack. It's going to be called Pulumi dev. It's going to create a resource group called resource group. So it says there are 2 things that will be created. Do you want to perform this update? I don't. But I want to go and say details, because in details I can get more information in here. And one thing that is interesting when it comes to Pulumi is that it has a very opinionated approach to naming. With infrastructure as code, we should not give things proper names, right? We should have sort of randomly created names, because if we start using real names, we get attached to them and we treat them as pets and not as cattle. And also it's likely to collide with other people's naming. So what Pulumi does whenever you create a resource is that it's nice enough to add 6 characters, or is that 8 characters? 2, 4, 6, 8 characters randomly at the end to each one of your resources. Sweet, I really like that, but not for my resource groups. I want to go into Azure and I want to see my resource groups having a specific name. So what we can do is, it has a second parameter here, where we can get resource group name, where we can say resource group, like that, and it would be named resource group. So this first thing you pass in is sort of a name that is used by Pulumi to keep track of the resource, and it's also the base for the real name with the additional characters at the end. But if you go in and specifically define resource group name, you're saying that this is the name that I want to use, don't auto-generate it for me. Resource group is obviously a crap name, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and use my TypeScript stuff here and go name equals Pulumi dot get project. And then we'll add a little dash and we'll do Pulumi dot get stack. And somebody's going to say, Chris, there's string interpolation in TypeScript. Yes, there is. I really don't care. We do name like that instead. Like that. And then we go back out here again. No, actually, I did it down here. Let's do. Oh, okay, I can do it out here now when I figure out that it's full screen. Pulumi up. Test 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so there's another minute of your life going into nothing, and I will not be able to give it back to you in any way. I'm sorry. You could be doing worse things, honestly, but not much. Come on. I just want to mention that this is also that I told you that it was running on my machine at home. So it's an i9 with 32 gigs of RAM, and it takes a minute. So it's actually not the size of the machine. That was a bad, sorry. Yeah, you cannot make it faster by having a beefy machine. It's something inside of Pulumi that causes it. What I wanted to show you was, if we go into the details now, you can see here that it has renamed my Pulumi group, the resource group name Pulumi-dev, which is what I would expect it to do. Then we go yes. That will now start running in the background and updating my resources. And updating means it's going to create a resource group. So while that runs, I can go back. Oh, no. Don't you stop working. There is. I can go in here and we'll go ahead and create a storage account. So I just go new Azure storage account. I give it a name. I give it an account name. However, the storage account has to be named lowercase, maximum 24 characters, cannot contain dashes or spaces. So I use, once again, power of TypeScript, makes it simple. I just go name.toLowercase to .replace to replace things. Much simpler than the syntax you have in Terraform, for example. Then resource group name, tell it what resource group to put it into, what kind of storage I want, giving it SKU. One thing to note here, if I hover over this thing here, it says it's the Pulumi output of string. So resource group.name is not a string. It's an output of string. Outputs, and also not something called inputs, but outputs specifically are asynchronous properties. So how many of you are used to JavaScript or TypeScript? Okay, some of you at least. They use something called promises. So it's basically an asynchronous way, something that will run asynchronously and come back at a later point with a response. So what they've done is some properties in Pulumi cannot be proper strings, because the name here, for example, well, that might be something that gets generated, specifically name won't, but some other things can actually be generated and populated by Azure. So when the resource is created, this thing is populated for me. So to be able to handle that thing that the value is not there until the resource is actually there, it uses output of string as an asynchronous way to access a property that will be there sometime in the future when Azure tells you what it is. We can also go in and we can add this idea of hierarchy. So we can say that the parent for this thing is the resource group, which will give it nice hierarchical things when we run Pulumi up, so we know that they're connected together. Now, this thing out here should have run now. It is, it's done. It's created two things, a stack and a resource group. And if we go back in here, you'll see here in Pulumi under stacks, there's a dev.json, and there's a JSON file in here that keeps track of every single resource that has been created. So it will have a resource group. That's about it, because that's all I've created so far. But that's the way it stores state. I just want to show you that. So let's cut that. So the next thing is I want to have a website. So I want to build a storage account with a static website with a CDN in front of it and a domain connected to it. That's sort of the end goal here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another little snippet here. So I'm going to create what's called a storage account static website. Once again, I just go new storage account static website, give it a name, give it some information that's needed in here, tell it what parent should be there. So the storage account is going to be the parent for it. That's it, done. Yes, I have snippets. Yes, I am cheating, but it would take too long for me to type. If you had ever seen me type, you'd be so happy that I was using snippets. The last thing is that a lot of our infrastructure that we set up, we might need information from that infrastructure later on in our pipelines, right? Or we need to export that information because we need the name of different things, or passwords that have been generated and things like that needs to be inserted into different places and so on. So what we can do is we can use export const. So we can export, in this case I'm going to export the website URL, which that's going to be auto-generated for me, so I won't know that. So we're going to do storage account primary endpoints dot. And if we look here, web is down here, but it is of type output string. So it's an asynchronous thing. So I can't use that. I can't export something that will be there in the future. So what we export instead is we run apply, which is basically a way to say, please take this value here, and once you know the value, pull out the thing called web. So we get this asynchronous handling of that property using apply. So the next thing I want to do is I want to do more things to my static website. I want to add a CDN. I want to add a custom domain to it. But if I keep adding that in my index.ts, that's just going to be one long-ass bloated file. And most systems have a way to fix that. Terraform has modules, Bicep has modules, and so on as well. But here we've got code, right? So I can just go out here and say, I want to have a new file. I'm going to call it static website.ts. And that, for some reason, restarts the TypeScript engine, which then means that TypeScript doesn't work for a little while. Give me a second. Let's see if I can get this to run. So this is cool. And being that it's just Node stuff, I can package things into Node modules. So I could have Node modules for my company that we can reuse. So I can have this predefined thing that you just download an NPM package and you use that to get like predefined infrastructure. The fact that I'm not getting my stuff here is a bit annoying. Can I please get my snippet? There it is. So I'm going to add some imports up here to begin with. I could almost have typed those as fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a class in here. So I'm going to export class static website. And I'm going to extend Pulumi dot, no IntelliSense. Okay, component resource, like that. So a component resource in Pulumi is, sorry, I'm just going to see, I need to get IntelliSense working. The fastest way to do that is often to just restart code. A component resource is basically combination of different resources that is represented as a single resource in Pulumi. So in here, we're going to add a constructor. And the constructor basically calls the base class, giving it a name of the type, a name of the thing that I'm creating, some arguments, and some options. So these are the things that we get normally by using Pulumi. So it looks just like a Pulumi thing. Then I can go out here and I can take my storage account and my static website instance, move that into the constructor here, change this to a this dot, and then TypeScript is not playing nice with me. And this is why I was using my computer at home, because there's something about TypeScript in VS Code later versions that is just not doing what it should. Okay, I have to do this manually. So I'll do a read only storage account. It's going to be Azure.storage account. Really hope that TypeScript comes along in a while. Okay, so I turned that into a this, so it's a globally available thing. There are a couple of things in here that doesn't work. So come on, sorry, why is TypeScript not working for me now? Okay, so what's going to happen here is there are a couple of problems here. I am expecting there to be a resource group that I can play with. Can't use that because that was in my previous file, so I need to get some arguments into this thing here. And the way you do that in Pulumi is that you create an interface. So I'm going to create an interface here called static website args. And then I'm going to turn my arguments that I pass in from any into those specific argument types. And then in here we can go and say args dot resource group name, I think I named it. Thank you, IntelliSense or tooling. So I need to change that. I need to change the parent to be this because the resource group is not available anymore. This is going to fail because this thing also needs the resource group name. So we're going to do args.resourceGroupName in here. And the storage account is now going to be a globally available thing. So it's going to be this and this. Oh, look at that. I now have IntelliSense. Okay. So I think this looks okay. There are no squiggly lines telling me that I'm doing it wrong. So this should be fine. So I've now moved everything into this static websites class instead, which is kind of nice. So just need to figure out where I am. There it is. What I can do now is I can go back to my index.ts, say import from, this is also a funny one, this is not going to work. Nope. Static website. There it is. And then down here we can do, cool thing is when TypeScript isn't working, my snippets are working better, so it's at least a little bit of a bonus. So I can go out here, and this is really nice now because I can just go and say website equals new static website, and it creates the storage account and the storage stuff for, or the storage account static website. Problem here is the complaints about that not being available, so that's now available under website.storage account. There it is. But I want to make this better, right? But before I do that, we can go ahead and we can go out to this. And I'm going to go ahead and say, there, and let's go Pulumi up -- yes to tell it to just run. Don't ask me for permission. Don't show me what you're going to change. Just run it. Which is a scary notion when I don't have IntelliSense, but let's just hope that it works. Can't go more than sideways. So what I want to do is I want to have a CDN. So I want to put a CDN on top of my website. So what I can do, once again, I have code, right? So I can go in here and I can say add CDN, if I could spell, like that. Then to create a CDN, I'll go ahead and create, now IntelliSense works, so I don't have my snippets. There it is. I go create a CDN profile. I just go new CDN profile and tell it what profile I want. I want to use Microsoft CDN and a few things like that. Then we do another snippet in here to create a Cdn endpoint. So basically what we do is we say, I find out where do you want to point the CDN to, so basically the static website's primary endpoint. Then I add remove the HTTPS and the slash at the end. Then I create a CDN endpoint. I'm going to store that. Still can't do that for some reason. So we have to go up here and say CDN endpoint, question mark of that type, like that. So I create a CDN endpoint. I point to the resource group, point it to the CDN profile, and do some settings in here. That what it's in there is very specific to Azure as such. But what I want to show is really cool because I can now go back out here and say website dot add CDN. So now I have the ability to add CDN whenever I use a static website in just one little magical call here. So I also want to have a DNS in front of it. So I want to be able to do a subdomain on my own domain so that I can quickly put it up so I can look at it. For that, I'm going to have to use a DNS zone, which is going to be of type azure.network.zone. And I'm going to have a subdomain, which is going to be a string. So I put those as inputs. Once again, programming. So I can just add whatever parameters I need in as such. I put a DNS zone and a subdomain. Now, once I've got that, I can go down here and I can add a little snippet here that sets up the CNAME record. Once again, just new Azure Network record set. Tell it that I want to create a CNAME. CNAME should be the subdomain. Weird stuff going on here, I'm well aware of it. To figure out what resource group that my DNS zone is actually located in, I take the DNS zone's ID and run magical regular expressions on top of it. We all know that that will make my application much, much better because regular expression is fantastic. Basically cuts out a little section in the middle because the ID contains the resource group name. You just need to know where to look in the ID to figure it out. And then I say it's a CNAME record, time to live is an hour. I point it towards my CDN endpoint, so basically CDN, use that for the CDN. Then the next thing is I want to use a custom domain for the CDN. The problem is that there's no support in adding custom domains to your CDN in the Azure API. If there's no support in the Azure API, there's no support for it in Pulumi, because Pulumi generates its tooling, or sorry, its packages based on auto-generated things from the OpenAPI spec. Luckily, there's a sample on GitHub on how to do it with the Azure CLI. So what we can do, or what I did, was I went to there, to GitHub, and I stole their demo. So I'm going to go cdn custom domain.ts. And the thing is, I'm just going to paste this and then I'm going to explain. There are two Azure packages for Pulumi. There's one called Azure Native, and there's one called Azure. You want to use Azure Native, because that is the one that's auto-generated and builds on top of the OpenAPI spec. If you use the one called Azure, it's a handcrafted thing with a bunch of extra features in there that they don't say that you should use anymore because it's sort of lagging behind feature-wise. Let's try and restart this. So what I did is the demo that I have works on the old, this failed as well, okay, this is going well. Unable to compile types with CDN endpoint, sorry, give me a second, I'll fix this. I was hoping for types IntelliSense today, let's just, sorry. Yeah, so what they do, CDN endpoint, it is there. What did it complain about? Unable to compile static website. The property CDN endpoint does not exist on static website. It does. It is literally right up here. Let's try that again. Okay, so what I'm saying is you've got the old package and the new package, but the cool thing about Pulumi is that you can actually run whatever packages you want in combination. So I can use the old package together with the new package, which is what I'm doing. Come on, there it is. So let's see if I can get this to run now. So let's do pi. Pi, please give me IntelliSense. Because this is also one of those I can't actually just pull in. Come on. Okay, let's try this. While that runs, there it is. Okay. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm pulling in the old ARM package. So actually, I'm not actually, sorry, I'm pulling in the ARM package for Azure and some REST stuff for Azure and so on. So I'm building my own custom module, which is available on GitHub. And then what it does, it has these methods in here for create, delete, update, and such. I just made a very simple version of it to support the case that I had. One thing is it needs me to install a couple of NuGet packages for it to work. So I'm going to npm install at Azure. Okay, it wants me to take a screenshot. Nope. At Azure/Arm Cdn, but I have an old code, so I actually need to use version 5.3.1. And I need at Pulumi/Azure as well, because I need 2 packages. So that should run. I hope. Yep, there it is. It's going to complain about it being deprecated and things like that. That's fine. Everything is deprecated and wrong in Node anyway. So with that in place, I can go back up here and I can do another import. So we'll do import from /. It's not going to come up. Cdn custom domain semicolon. Can I get help here? No. Cdn custom domain. What did people do before you had tooling help? So now that we have the custom domain, I can go in here and hopefully get another. That works fine. So I can go in and I can pull in my custom domain. So once again, being that I've coded it myself. No, I haven't. I stole it off GitHub. But it's like I coded it myself. And it just looks like a regular Pulumi thing, right? Just as with the static thing. So I just do custom domain, use CDN custom domain. I run some stuff in here. And the cool thing about this code is that if you go in here, what it really does, it actually creates, it uses this CDN management tool from Azure, and it uses the credentials from ARM to do the work that couldn't be done with Pulumi. So now this complains. Does that allow me to, oh, look at that, IntelliSense. Sweet, I can do that. That's going to complain because it has to be nullable, like that. Go back out here. Now that I've got that in place, it's going to complain and say, do you need to pass in some stuff? Well, I do. First thing I need is I need to get a DNS zone. So I'm going to go and pull out a DNS zone. There it is. Ooh, no, sorry. There's one thing that's wrong in here. Need to remember that. Down here is one of those that actually highlights how hard this can be. Name is output of T, right? If you do this thing is one of those asynchronous output of string. So it basically means I can't do a string concatenation because it's going to end up with subdomain dot output of string. So what we need to do in here is we need to convert this into a little apply statement like that. So we do DNS zone name apply, and then we do string concatenation to create the domain name. Then out here, now that this is in place, I can go and pull up there it is. Pull out that. So instead of creating a DNS zone, because it's already in place, it's already there, what I'm doing is DNS zone or zone.get. So zone.get says that there is already one in place, use that instead of creating one. So I'm going to piggyback on my DNS zone that's already in Azure. And the way you do that, you basically use a get and you give it the ID. So hard coding the ID in here is a really, really shit idea. Sorry, really bad idea. So what we can do is we can use that cool little feature that we have. Actually, we can start out with that. I'll fix that later on. So what we'll do is DNS zone and name. That's going to create the subdomain for me. But the thing is, as I said, hard coding this is a really bad idea, but we have a full configuration system at our hands. So what we can do is, let's do it here. Let's go down here, and we'll do Pulumi. We're going to say config, because I want to work with the config. I want to say, actually, I want to set exactly what's in here. So I'm going to go and say Pulumi set DNS zone ID and give it a value and run that. What happens now, after it's asked for my credentials, is that inside pulumi.dev.yaml, you'll see that it has added pulumi demo.dns zone ID, and it put it in here. And to be able to use that, I can just go out here and say const zone ID equals, actually we need const config Pulumi.new Pulumi.config, like that, and then we can do config.require, because I need it to be there, otherwise you can get a null back. So I'm going to say require, and it's going to fail if it's not available. And it's going to be DNS zone ID, because that's what I named it. And then I can take the zone ID here, and I can paste it in here, like that. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to do a console.log, which is actually lowercase. Typing with a delay is really, really hard. There it is. Zone ID. There's a reason for me doing this. That ended up in the wrong place as well. Typing with the delay is hard. Come on, it's getting worse on top of it. Zone ID, like that. Yes, zone ID, come on. There it is. Okay, so now I've got that. One thing I want to show you as well is if I do this thing here, say the Pulumi config set DNS zone ID -- secret, run that again, and we look into the dev YAML thing here, you'll see that it's actually encrypted the value for me. But it's all transparent, so I can go ahead and let's jump out. Let's go ahead and jump out to this. That one, can I please get that one? Can I please get that? I said I couldn't dance, but I have nothing else to do because right now it's completely frozen. There it is. Oh, no, something else is wrong. So let's try and cancel that. Come on. I've got like 2 minutes left. Stop freezing on me. Now I lost my mouse pointer as well. It's actually not in the cloud. It's in Hammarby Sjöstad, which is right over there. There it is. Let's try this again. Let's do Pulumi up. I'm not going to do yes. Let's just do Pulumi up. Come on. Okay. So what was supposed to happen if my machine hadn't been the crap it is that this runs through now. It figures out all the things that needs to be created. With the little output at the end, I did an export const at the end, right? That export is available to us by writing Pulumi stack output and the name of it. So if you run it in an Azure pipe or in a pipeline, for example, a build pipeline, you can run the Pulumi stuff, and then in a later part of it, you can just go Pulumi stack output and the thing, and you get that value back. So if you output the URL to your websites that you set up for your APIs, you can use that configuration later on and things like that, which is really, really nice. I still got 1 minute to see if this actually tells me that it works, or if me coding without IntelliSense obviously doesn't work at all. While that runs, there's one more thing I can show you in my last minute. Come on. Oh, there is. I was using this apply thing, right, to get out my asynchronous things, my output of T. There's another cool feature that they've done, which is part of JavaScript actually, which is Pollumi.interpolate. There it is. So what you do with that is you put your things in here. Let's see, I had the thing that I wanted to write in here so I remember it correctly. Oh, let's do it like this. So what we do, we put it into backticks. And then we add, it's not going to be storage account anymore. That's kind of the problem in here. What we want to do is we want to do website.cdn endpoint. I think that was the one. Wasn't it Cdn endpoint? Damn it, why did I lose that part where I was put right? There it is. Sorry, custom domain is the one I want. Custom domain (dot host name). The problem here is that the host name is actually just the host name. It doesn't include HTTPS. it's // so hps:// and / at end here. So with this Pollumi Interpolate and then backticks, you can actually do string concatenation or string interpolation with output of t as well. Let's just go. My clock says 1 more minute, and there's obviously something wrong in my code. Damn it. Missing variable, please set a value. I did give it a value. Okay. I used the wrong name for the zone ID, sorry about that. You hopefully get the general gist of it. I am sorry that my machine started breaking down on me yesterday. If you have any questions, I'll be around, so feel free to come up and say hi. Otherwise, I'm on the Twitters. Nobody else is on Twitter, only old dudes are on Twitter nowadays. Everyone else is on Instagram. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me there or here. Thank you so much for listening.